Hi everyone, I'm Olivier Jezequel and I run the Paris office of LGA Management. Thank you for joining us today. I'm sure most of you know already Steve McCurry. For those who don't, Steve is an American photographer born in Philadelphia. For more than 40 years, he has photographed humanity at its best and at its worst. Steve has been recognized with some of the most prestigious awards in the industry, including the Robert Capa Gold Medal, National Press Photographer Award, and 4 First Prize Awards from the World Press Photo Contest. Most recently, the Royal Photographic Society in London awarded Steve the Centenary Medal for Lifetime Achievement, and in 2019, he was inducted into the International Photography Hall of Fame. He has published 20 books to date, held exhibitions in museums and galleries around the world, and his work is held in numerous collections. Most of you don't know Steve personally though, and you will probably blush by hearing me say this, but Steve is also the kindest man you can come across, a hell of a photographer and a beautiful soul. Today he's going to talk about his latest book, In Search of Elsewhere. In time of COVID, this title has a profound resonance. We all are in the search of this elsewhere. Steve might have the start of an answer for you. I give the floor to my business partner, Glenn, who will be exchanging with Steve. We all thought that my strong French accent can become painful after a while, and we wanted to save you from this inconvenience. Over to you, Steve and Glenn.
Thanks, Olivier. Your accent could never be painful. Hello, Steve.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. Perhaps we should start by asking what the inspiration behind the book was.
Well, this was a look at, we started scanning pictures that I hadn't looked at for some 20 or 30 years. So we started going through the archive, digging deep. And then of course, during in the beginning of COVID, I had all this time to dig deep into the archive and pick pictures which had never been really looked at or selected, but also pictures, recent pictures, which I hadn't really used or published. So it's kind of a combination of pictures from the past and then pictures from the present.
Great. I think we're now going to take a look through some of the pictures in the book. For those of you that haven't seen it yet, at the end of the talk, when we're asking some questions, we're going to run a film that shows you the whole book. But what we're going to do for the next half hour or so is just look at some of my personal favorites from the book and ask Steve a few questions, and hopefully he'll give us an insight into how he creates this fantastic imagery. So the obvious picture to start with is the cover picture, Gulmarg, Kashmir, 1999. I understand that Gulmarg was your guide for this trip in Kashmir. Were you aware how striking he was when you met him?
Well, we worked together for several weeks. And of course, sometimes what's right in front of you, the obvious thing, isn't something that you pay attention to.
Yeah.
And this one day I thought, we were it was in a kind of a snowy place in the air. And I just thought, you know what, hey, by the way, you got a very amazing kind of look, full of expression and emotion. And I thought, let me shoot some portraits of you. And there you have it.
Does he know he's on the cover of the book?
No, I haven't talked to him in 20 years.
Wow, I wonder if he sees it. Well, that would be quite an accolade. Do you look for anything specific when you're taking a portrait?
I think you were looking for character, looking for a story in somebody's face, emotion. And I think that this particular man just has this sense of presence and emotion. And I just, but I think a portrait of face has to tell a story. It has to kind of take you somewhere and on some kind of emotional journey. And something impactful, something that hopefully you can't get out of your mind, you can't forget.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I say you ticked all those boxes here. The next picture we'll take a look at is Havana, Cuba, taken recently in 2019. You're renowned for your ability to capture the connection between people. Illustrated it perfectly here in this moment outside a Cuban greengrocer's with this pair of checker players having a game. How considered is each element in your compositions, or would you say it was more instinctive?
Well, the thing about Cuba, which is so wonderful, is that people are actually doing things on the street. So whenever I see somebody playing chess, or kids playing football or whatever, at first I see the scene, and then I kind of zero in on it, and I start to think about the composition, the background, the action, and I think I stood here for literally several minutes, trying to be invisible, but just trying to fit the elements, the characters who are kind of coming and going. So it's a combination of sort of seeing the moment and then kind of staying on it and kind of working the situation, trying to kind of refine it and kind of hone it to a fine point where you tell the story, but also the elements come together in hopefully a very poetic, very harmonious way.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. The next image is Lord, France, 1989. This one. Did this moment feels like you just completely happened upon it? Was that the case?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time there, and I was always searching, always observing, and I saw these two nurses kind of momentary pausing on the, and I just thought, this is wonderful. This is the color, the design, the symmetry. It all seemed to come together. So I think it's a question of being attentive, observant, and just waiting, kind of ready to pounce when that moment is right.
When the moment arrives, perfect. I read recently that the painter Agnes Martin sits in her studio waiting to be inspired. I love that story about her, actually. I thought that was genius. How are you inspired?
Well, I never wait for inspiration. I just kind of get up and get out on the street or get out with my camera. And I find that once I'm out kind of moving, getting the wheels going, yeah. Then I get inspired. But I think that often if I don't wait for that to happen, I kind of try and make it happen, yeah, just by sheer, running the camera and walking around and starting to get the wheels moving. And then I find my groove, and then things start to happen. It's kind of magic in a way for me, but I kind of just want to get moving. And
it's interesting whether things happen or whether you make them happen, I guess, but it sounds to me like you're making stuff happen.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever the mood, the weather, I just plow straight ahead.
Cool. The next image is Papua New Guinea, 2017. And this is father and son participating in a ritual dance. You told me once that you'd been influenced by Irving Penn's Worlds in a Small Room book. Was that in your mind when you took this picture?
That World in Small Rooms is one of the most sort of seminal pieces of photography ever made. And I always had that. In fact, I wanted to go to Papua New Guinea partly because of that body of work that he produced, wow, in New Guinea. And the thing about these people and their rituals is that it's so unique, it's so unusual. It's something which, I guess we look at them and they look at us and we kind of marvel at how strange we are to each other. But I think fundamentally, if we respect each other, that's where we want to be. I just found it just a remarkable, beautiful thing to watch these people.
Absolutely. Presumably they were as fascinated by you as you were by them, I'm guessing, right? You're quoted on saying that your work documents the human condition. What are you wanting your audience to take away from looking at a picture like this?
I think that, again, it's about respecting culture, being fascinated by culture, wanting to explore it, but always being reverential and respectful, and just marveling at how amazing this planet is that we have.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Next picture is Vrindavan in Uttar Pradesh, India, 1996. This is the Hindu Spring Festival of Holi, where crowds are covered in powdered pigment or colored water. The first question has to be, what color were you at the end of this session? Did you put yourself right in the middle of the action to get this picture?
Well, these people throwing color are always trying to, hit the photographers. And, I was always worried about my camera and my lens, and not so much worried about I was kind of completely drenched in color. In fact, a lot of it doesn't ever come out of your clothing. So I had to kind of almost throw all that away. But what I was really concerned about was the lens and the element getting, wet and not being able to shoot. But it's incredible. I mean, it's literally worth the hassle to make those pictures, because it's so otherworldly and so unbelievable. It feels like a kind of a movie set or some kind of another world. It's just incredible.
Well, and is there a picture of you at the end of one of these festivals?
Yeah, but I dare not show it. It's more covered in paint and, water. It's just kind of
Fair enough. Show me privately one time. So the atmosphere in this picture, as you said, is electric. What it takes priority in these situations, creating a great image technically or capturing the moment?
Definitely the moment. And the technical part should be, automatic. We should be on automatic pilot.
Yeah.
We should know our equipment so that we're not thinking about that. And it's only about the moment, the picture, the story, the emotion, and trying to get this, because you don't have time to think about, the shutter setting and all that. That should already be decided long before you step into the situation.
Cool. The next picture is Antigua, Guatemala, 2017. This is Good Friday during a Holy Week procession to lay the body of Christ to rest in a local church while the streets are filled with smoking incense. To me, this picture evokes so much emotion. Do you feel an emotional connection when you're taking a picture like this, or do you try to remain detached and focus solely on the aesthetic?
Well, I think for me, I found it very emotional, and I really felt like I had stepped back into this kind of medieval procession, and I was so excited about the light and the smoke and the shapes and the music and the smell of the incense. It literally, I felt like I was back in, the Middle Ages. But again, you need to stay, one part of your mind has to be on the picture, the placement, the composition, the story, and try to convey this incredible atmosphere, which is, just something which I've never seen before in my life. These monks with incense and fire and smoke and chanting. It was, again, just something
incredible. Makes me want to see it for myself. Have you ever encountered any animosity from any of your subjects when taking a picture that could be perceived as being during a personal or a private moment?
Well, yeah, that happened a few times a long time ago, and I sort of got into a problem. But I've figured out that it's always better to ask permission to leave the situation better than you found it. I never want to kind of spoil my mood, and I think if there's problems and your mind is clouded with some disturbance, so I always try and leave in a friendly way, photograph people, ask permission, and have it be kind of more of a joyous, positive experience than somehow trying to, steal pictures or photograph against people's will.
Sounds like a good strategy to me.
Yeah.
The next picture is Rijeka, Croatia, 1989. The colors, composition, and juxtaposition in this picture are sublime. What's the longest time you've ever spent waiting for that decisive moment?
Well, sometimes you have to come back to a place, over and over and over again, waiting for the right light. In this case, this was just something that it was a happy accident. It was just kind of a gift. I happened to be there in the right light. I was walking along this pier, and I noticed this fisherman with this incredible sunset occurring. But I think that I've gone back to the same location 20 or 30 times, waiting for the light, waiting for different kinds of weather, different moods, different situations. So I think you just have to be persistent, and sometimes things happen quickly, and you have to be ready, and sometimes you have to be patient and kind of look at the long game and say, I'm gonna, figure this out, however long it takes me.
Okay. And you're quite well known for your work in developing countries, presumably as this was where a lot of the conflict that you first documented was taking place. Now, do you get the same level of fulfillment from photographing in less stressful environments?
Well, yeah, I photographed in sort of war-torn areas of conflict for years. And I mean, this is a different time in my life. I think that I want to change the conversation, new chapter, do something different. There's, the world is so full of beautiful, wonderful things. So I've decided to move in another direction and, photograph things of beauty and art and places that I've, I still love to go to India and China and Russia, but I've decided to spend a lot more time in places like, Europe and places that I'm more familiar with.
Okay. And the next picture is perhaps quite a surprise, because you're known for shooting in warmer climates generally, full of color. So it is quite a different picture for you, this. But is there anywhere in the world that you haven't been yet that you'd like to photograph?
Well, I've always, I've worked in almost every country between Portugal and Vietnam. If you drew kind of a line across, I've worked in all those countries, Turkey and Bhutan, and Cambodia and Pakistan. The one country I haven't been to is Iran.
Wow.
And Iran is such a fascinating country, culturally, politically. In fact, I have a permanent exhibition in Iran. It's called the House of Steve, but I haven't been able to go there and see it. I'm hoping at some point to get a visa, but let's see. But I think that would be incredible to go there and spend some time.
I'm sure. See your exhibition that you've never seen. Yeah. Sorry, this picture is Antarctic Peninsula 2016. I didn't say that earlier. Climate change is at the forefront of all our minds these days, and you've traveled the world many times over. Have you noticed any major changes in the places that you've visited regularly from an environmental perspective?
Oh, yeah. Places like, Afghanistan. There's so many countries that I traveled to 30, even 40 years ago, which, the deforestation. This area in Africa called the Sahel, which runs from Senegal over to Sudan. It's this very thin, fragile strip, this ecosystem between the desert and the savanna, and that's very endangered. And the problem is that the Sahara could keep creeping southward, and I've noticed that that's in a really perilous situation. So, it's something that we really have to pull together and try and make the world a better place.
Indeed. Okay. The next picture is Belo Samar in Moradova in Madagascar, taken in 2019. This picture almost looks choreographed. Do you ever give direction to your subjects when you're taking a documentary project as opposed to a commercial assignment? Or do you see your role simply to observe and document what's happening?
Yeah, for me, the fun of street photography, of being out, is just absolutely capturing and working with what's in front of me. And that's really the joy of photography, is getting an unexpected moment and finding these unexpected situations where no doubt these boys were probably, started seeing I was with the camera, started performing. But this is what they do, and this is how I found them. And it was so wonderful just to stand there for 20 or 30 minutes and photograph the kind of acrobatic exercise and running around and just having fun. It's just a real joy.
You tempted to join in? Were you running around with these kids on the beach? Or
Yeah, no, I had a couple cameras and I was just trying to stay dry, and but it was great fun. They were great.
Yeah, it looks fun. The next picture is Inla Lake, Myanmar, 2011. This Intha fisherman fishes in quite a unique way. And I think a lot of people have asked, when we've been talking about your work, if you familiarize yourself with the local customs before you visit somewhere.
Well, I try and learn enough to get me going, but the discovery and I think seeing things for the first time and learning things for the first time is also kind of wonderful. So,
yeah.
You know, you always want to do research, but maybe not too much research to kind of spoil that surprise.
Yeah.
Think about this picture, which I was always, well, there's 2 points. One is that now they have motors on those small boats, and this method of rowing is kind of disappearing, which is really sad, because it was so wonderful to see them silently kind of gliding through the lake on with their foot paddling. The other thing which after having made this picture, was noticing that plume of smoke off in the distance, and he has this cigar in his mouth, and how they kind of almost potentially could match up.
So that wasn't intentional. That was one of those happy accidents you noticed afterwards. Okay, the next one's one of my favorites. This picture was taken in Havana in Cuba in 2010. I know you had a long conversation with this woman on the streets of Havana, and she told you that she worked and studied in New York in the 1950s. I love how you captured her style and spirit. Your documentary work focuses mainly on the people that you meet along your travels, rather than well-known faces that a lot of the famous photographers work with. Are you interested in celebrity culture and documenting it?
Oh, absolutely. I think every people, every strata of society, I think we all have our story to tell. And often these people, celebrities, have a great different lifestyle. And I think that would be really fascinating to explore, as well as this woman who I just happened by with this incredible, purple hair, who I thought was so stylish and so unexpected, with her towel wrapped around her shoulders, almost like this expensive shawl. She definitely had style and a kind of a little bit of a fashion sense. So
very strong sense of style. Yeah, I love it. Okay, and our last picture from the book is Wadai Rum, Jordan, 2019. This picture documents the nomadic Bedouin who live there. Most of them now live in a village, but some of them, like these guys here, still uphold the traditions. How important do you consider your role in documenting vanishing cultures? I guess it's similar to the fisherman we saw earlier, which they don't fish like that anymore. Is that something you actively try to do?
I think it's important to, I mean, I don't see myself as a historian or a social anthropologist, but I do think it's important to have a document of how we live. And so in the future, when things change, we have some memory of how we were.
Yeah. And
in the future, it's unlikely that these Bedouin will kind of go out and graze their camels and have a campfire. Same way with that man with the lake. So the way we dress, our architecture, what we eat, music, is changing. And I just think it's important to document it and have a memory, so we can look back in the future and say, that's incredible, the way we once were. I mean, that was magical, it was wonderful.
Absolutely.
That's kind of the role of the photographer, to have that memory.
Thank you very much. That's the end of us talking through the book for this stage. There will be an opportunity to actually see the book as we filmed the pages being turned, that we'll look through later when we're asking some questions. But I'm going to pass you over to Olivier now, Steve, who's going to just talk through some of your advertising commissions. I'm going to have a drink of water. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Hello again, Steve and everyone. We are now going to take a look at how Steve's work translates into commercial work by taking a look at some of our favorites. So the first is a commission for Vacheron Constantin watches. They commissioned you to take a series of pictures to celebrate the 20th anniversary of their overseas watch. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, this was one of the great assignments. We had a great team together from DDB in Paris. Went all over the world, photographed these magical, iconic places that spoke about, human accomplishment and things we've built. So it was really a very positive, I thought, uplifting to see what we've done globally in different parts of the world and celebrate that. It was a very inspiring project.
Because they took you to 12 different locations to represent the hours of the watch face. And
yeah,
you took what, 3 pictures in each location? All 36 pictures were unveiled at the exhibitions in each location. It's like a dream job for a photographer, isn't it?
It was we went to Russia and China and Japan and Africa and the US, Europe. I mean, it was a global project. And
I believe the one we see on the screen is from Paris, isn't it? And I know that there's a lot of Parisians watching the talk at the moment. I don't think as a Parisian we have access to the location. It's like the oldest observatory in the center of Paris, which is quite magical. So
yeah, it was a real honor to be able to go in there and see it, photograph it, spend a couple of days and document this historic location.
Which shows that you're not at ease only in exotic location, but you can be at your ease in city centers in cities such as Paris.
Well, there's a whole there's a lot of technical work that went into these pictures, lighting and different, so it's not, it's not a snapshot. You don't kind of walk in and it takes some work it's a big space and it's an odd space. So you want to, kind of do justice to the location.
Did you use natural light as well, or was it on completely artificial light on this one, for example?
There's a lot of extra light, extra light to bring in to kind of highlight the grandeur of this location.
Wow, that sounds like a hell of a project. The second commission we'd like to take a look at is your Pirelli calendar from 2013. This is perhaps not the sort of campaign you'd associate Steve with. My favorite story from this project was your surprise at the number of people involved on the actual shoot. Bear in mind, guys, that Steve is mainly used to wandering the globe taking pictures on his own or with a guide and an assistant at most. What was this project like for you, Steve?
Well, the Pirelli calendar is one of the great assignments in the world. It's a legendary campaign. The best photographers, the A-list models, everybody brings their best effort to this project. But how we did this in our own unique, different way was we decided to select models based on their humanitarian work, environmental work. So that was the selection process. The models who were involved in, education, healthcare, environmental issues. So that was and we were able to give them a voice in the interviews and to be able to talk about what mattered to them.
It's true that when you think of Pirelli calendar, you don't necessarily think of, you think of fashion photographer with semi-naked models, and you don't necessarily associate it with your work. So was that the way for you to give it some substance?
I was prepared to do this as a nude calendar. I was willing to do that, sacrifice my integrity.
Yeah, I'm sure you would.
But in the end, we thought it was more appropriate it would be more impactful to do it in the way we did. And it was, I think, it was one of the few calendars that was not nude. But I thought it was a, huge success. And
I think everybody remembers it.
Great positive experience.
Wow, good. Well, next time you're booked for it, please bring me, and I'll make sure to tag along. The thirdly commission work we wanted to show today is the commission you did for Microsoft. where you were hired by them in 2015, if I remember correctly, to take photographs of landscapes in New Zealand for them to use as wallpapers. It feels like another dream job. Is there a recurring theme with you there? Are you only associated with photographers' dream projects, or do you make them dream projects?
Well, I think it's great to be confronted with a challenge, something new, something different, a problem to solve. You go in and say, how can we do something surprising? How can we do something wonderful? How can we do something in a new way, unexpected? So this assignment was really to show the grandeur of the planet. New Zealand was a place we thought would offer a lot of locations, mountains, snow, the sea. And it was an incredible time to be, flying around helicopters and being on the beach. It's funny, for all the time we spent in the helicopters, for me, my favorite image was this location. And I just thought it was magical.
It's a beautiful picture, beautiful.
Big, and this woman running down the beach, just magical.
It's incredible. And do you enjoy landscape photography as much as portraiture or documentary?
I do. I think landscapes are, again, you want to bring its own personality, the impact and the emotion to a landscape the same way you would with a person. Something that really has impact, not something which is sort of kind of boring or kind of something memorable. I think that's the key. Something which is going to stay with you, something that you can't forget. That's what I always strive for.
Well, I think you achieved that perfectly on this campaign. For example, the last one we wanted to discuss about today is the Macallan whiskey in 2019. You were asked to document their cask making process in Spain, the US, and Scotland. This project, like the Vacheron Constantin, seemed to give you quite a lot of freedom in terms of picture you choose to take. Can you please tell us more about this project?
First of all, the people at Macallan were wonderful. We documented the construction of this distillery, which is so unique and so amazing, and it completely blends into the countryside. It's this big kind of industrial facility, yet it's so poetic and hidden out of sight, and you wouldn't really even know it's there unless you kind of, somebody pointed it out to you. But this ancient process of making whiskey and in casks was a real learning experience, and to be able to see this process, particularly in Spain and the U.S., where these craftsmen that create these casks was a really education and a beautiful thing to witness. The whole process was fascinating, especially at the end of the day when we toasted each other with a glass of Macallan.
Yes,
but
that's the worst way of ending a day.
Yeah, but it was the location in Scotland is magical. There's the river and all this ancient architecture around, and then suddenly hidden out of sight is this location which kind of blows your mind.
Wow. But I remember you telling me once that you liked being given a brief by advertising agencies because it's such a clash between the way you normally work and you like to have a brief and the process of working, etc. Do you mind me asking if there's any advertising campaign that you haven't done yet you would dream to do?
I think that the challenge, the something which is something which you want to do something which, and again, do something really unusual, something from a different perspective, a different angle, something which is going to turn heads. I think that's something and that can be almost anything. You know, I've worked in pharmaceutical, you know, cars and you know, luxury brands, and the challenge is to do something, you know, let's do something wonderful. Let's kind of blow this thing out of the water and do something amazing.
Wow, well, thanks. I'm not finished grilling you, Steve. I'm going to ask Glenn to join us again because we're going to move on to the third part of this talk, which is not related to pictures already taken, but questions from the audience we gathered by email prior to the talk. I apologize because we received a lot of questions and we didn't want it to be too heavy and too long, so we've selected only 3 of them. And I apologize for the people who sent some questions and couldn't be addressed, and we'll make our best to reply to you by email on a personal basis. So the first question is for you, Glenn.
Thanks, Olivier. The first question came in from Liz Taylor from Media Arts Lab. And she asked, you've called yourself a visual storyteller. As written stories have elements, character, plot, conflict, resolution, etc. What do you consider to be the necessary elements to a visual story, Steve?
I think the number one thing is emotion, something which kind of grabs you. You know, composition and light and creating interesting shapes is all well and good, but I think you need that be transported. And I think the emotion is always something which is what I'm striving to include in the picture. And that's what I'm attracted to when I look at a face or walking on the street or on a set or a model, is somehow bringing some kind of wonderful, you know, emotion. It could be any kind of emotion, doesn't have to be sad or it could be joy or whatever. But I think we want to have something that's you can really sink your teeth into in a picture and have it be memorable.
So it's about the feelings of the picture rather than the actual what's happening in the picture. That's what you've focused on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Thanks. And Olivier, next question.
I have a second question, but we also have a video of the actual book that we shot, and we can have it being run for people to have a look during we discuss this question. So it's going to be more visuals. It's not related to the question, but it's more visual like that. The second question is from Barbara Ganti at Armani. And she was wondering that when you undertake a documentary project, how do you prepare for it? And a more technical questions, with which camera do you shoot? And that's the $1 million question, Steve, isn't it?
Well, the camera I use is a Leica SL2. I think it's probably the best camera I've ever used. I've used a lot of different cameras, and I find this to be just a flawless instrument. It's just a beautiful camera. As far as preparation goes, I think you need to hit the ground running when you get to a location, and you need to kind of have a plan in place of, you know, where do I want to go? If there's a festival, if there's a market, if there's some event. But I always try and leave time for that serendipitous moment where you can wander and discover, and again, have that sort of those magic moments happen. And the only way you can really do that is by just being open and have the time to discover things. I always find that as you walk down the street, you get into that kind of zone, that sort of almost a meditative state. You start seeing things and things start revealing themselves, which maybe normally you wouldn't really be aware of or thinking that deeply. So being present in the moment.
Is it something that you've been working on yourself, or do you think you're natural about it? Is it like a natural approach for you, or something you have to work on?
I think you have to work on it. Again, that idea of inspiration, I think you get out, whether you're inspired or not, once you get out and you're working, you're kind of running film through the camera or running, you know, doing digital photography, that's when things start to happen. And I could start out being kind of, wishing I hadn't gotten out of bed. And then a couple hours later, I'm in this incredible situation, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is a great day. This is one of the best days. And you just have to kind of force yourself. But I do think preparation, obviously, is always something which you have to take care of. Read, look at films, look at YouTube, whatever. So you can't underestimate. Preparation is always important.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have a third question.
Fascinating. The last question comes from Matt Brook from Spring Studios. And he'd like to ask Steve, I was watching the Martha Cooper documentary recently, and she said, after she'd realized the long-held ambition to shoot an assignment for National Geographic, that when shooting for them, you have to make the picture, not take the picture. I wondered if that resonated with Steve with regard to his shoots for National Geographic.
Well, I think of, even apart from National Geographic, I think of the great work of, Henri Cartier-Bresson or Elliot Erwitt. I think you craft the picture. You make the picture in the sense that you look for the angle. Do you go closer? Do you come back? How do you set the shutter speed? So you're making this picture gradually. Sometimes you make, many exposures. So you're waiting for another moment. Maybe you step back a bit. Maybe you change the shutter speed. So it's not just simply just taking the picture and walking away. Sometimes you have to spend time with the situation and wait and work it. You have to work the situation. Things change, people move, the light changes. You use another lens. So you're constantly adjusting and readjusting, honing your image, the picture down to a fine point. And eventually sometimes it happens quickly. Sometimes you're there waiting for a few minutes, but it's definitely you're actually making the picture, not just simply, recording it as somebody would at a kind of a birthday party.
Fascinating. Okay, thanks very much, Steve. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. It's a pleasure to speak with you every time, but particularly today. So thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Enjoyed it very much.
Thank
Glenn.
you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
I think this is it, guys. I wanted to thank everybody who joined us today. And of course, I want to thank you, Steve, for your time. I also wanted to thank our Billy, who made this technically happen, and he's worked a lot, Billy, from our London office. So special thanks to you, Billy. But again, thank you, everyone. And for your information, this talk has been recorded, so we'll be sending it to you by email with a link, so you can share it with your team or everyone, or at least we will look at it, etc. So again, thank you very much, Steve. It was a pleasure to have you today. And thank you for exchanging all those thoughts and ideas on your photography. It was very inspirational. Thank you very much.
Always.
Thank you. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.